With the first unit all week to get ready for Sunday. Jackson State moved up to number 15 in this week's top 25 Division I AA college football poll. Jackson State is the only HBCU team ranked in the top 25. The Tigers opened the season Saturday with a 28-14 win over Hampton. Top 5 teams in this week's Division I poll: Ohio State, Penn State, LSU, Georgia, and Miami. The Dodgers lost to Pittsburgh 9-7. They still have a 2.5 game lead over San Diego in the NL West. The Angels beat Kansas City 5-1, a 2-run homer for right fielder Joe Adele. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Are you ready to be a part of the conversation that will help shape our nation's future? Get ready to join us for the Left Coast Forum, Saturday, October 25th at LA Trade Tech, where progressive voices will come together to tackle the issues that matter most to working families across Los Angeles and beyond. From economic justice to climate action, from healthcare to housing, we're bringing together the brightest minds and most passionate advocates for real solutions and real change. With workshops, 2 major keynote addresses, and a closing reception with great music and good food. It's the Left Coast Forum, where your voice matters and your ideas take action. Saturday, October 25th at LA Trade Tech. Brought to you by KBLA Talk 1580 and the LA Progressive. The future won't wait, and neither should you. Mark your calendar now to be there and be heard. Stay tuned to KBLA Talk 1580 for more details.
Let that go. He feeling a pimp, he know still in the drip. He know that these gon' hate. He know that you want him cause you know he fucking with me. And he ain't taking the bait. Make no mistake, just as I'm cute in this don't mean I won't run in your yeah, smoke. Whenever that see me out, she already know what I'm on. Flip flop, take it fake, I'm a chip chop. Say she don't know me, she been out on TikTok. Stop thinking you A should've been quiet. Can't get your back cause he with a pimp now. No, can't make me argue with no. Same dogging you out getting ghosted. Running to see what I posted. Getting in 10 with my feet by the ocean.
Yeah, that's my dedication to the President of the United States. Whenever, whatever. Good morning, y'all. We're about to turn up a little bit with the author of Black Nationalism in the United States, from Malcolm X to Barack Obama. He is an academic as well. He's a professor. He's a former president of the National Conference of Black Political Scientists, which is an important organization of African American, African, and Afro Caribbean political scientists. He's a professor there, University of San Francisco. Dr. James Lance Taylor, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Dominique.
Did you like my dedication, a little Megan Thee Stallion going out to the President of the United States this morning?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, I mean, there's so many moves being made, Dr. Taylor. I feel like I was warning, Project 2025, and they're going to do this, and he's going to do that. And for all of the loud and strong warnings that you gave, that I gave, that others gave, did you see this, the quickness, the rapidity with which they are rescinding our rights and changing the nature of our country? Did you see that coming?
You could see it, the turning. You could see the pivot in the same way that Du Bois shows us in Black Reconstruction, and Eric Foner and John Hope Franklin, all of those scholars who deal with Reconstruction, show the slow pivot. And of course, after, in the 19th century, it took just 12 years to undo, the short progress that had been made at the point of abolition. That's the best, I think, precedent for where we are. It's at the crossroads. And in the 1870s, with the 1876 election, the country chose, gave the devil the instrument, and the devil gave it back. And we chose the devil, and that's what Jim Crow was. And now we're at the crossroads again. And the first cause of the first cycle was the emergence of black elected officials like Hiram Revels and Blanche K. Bruce. Well, the first black president has had the same effect on the white psyche that the first black elected officials in the Reconstruction period did. And they have not recovered from the idea that a black man had become president in America. Trump was at the tipping point of all of this reaction, going back to the Tea Party and birther movement. And, that's sort of where the pivot begins. And then we saw the Black Lives Matter rise up. We saw George Floyd's movement rise up. We saw Oscar Grant's movement rise up. And then we saw Trump as the backlash and the tipping point to a general white backlash, as Martin Luther King called it, to perceived progress.
So it sounds like you're saying that one black president who was a centrist is causing the same level of backlash as an entire civil war and Reconstruction.
Well, less of the Civil War and Reconstruction, but more of the emergence of the first black elected officials. So the first black senators in Mississippi certainly had the same psychological effect on opponents that a black president would have, because that was absurd, the idea of a black president, as much as the black senator was absurd. So the reality that, Hiram Revels emerges and Blanche K. Bruce and many, many others that I'm not naming at every level of state government, this is what caused the general reaction that led to Reconstruction violence, that led to hundreds and hundreds of race massacres that, are well documented. And so these are just part, I think, of the cycles of American history. If you wanted me to be brief and short, this is part of the pattern of the cycles of American history.
Okay, so here's the thing. I get that there's ebb and flow. My dad used to talk about the Sisyphus syndrome. We roll the rock up the hill and it rolls back down on us. And I know that 3 steps forward, 2 steps back is still progress. But this appears to be different in the sense that it seems like a complete dismantling of our system of governance. I mean, I'm one example that I'm looking at is the arms race around, the gerrymandering, so-called redistricting that's happening in the 5-year point instead of the 10-year point. And where Democrats and Republicans are both on this bandwagon. I'm not sure how it ends. I support what the governor of my state is doing, but because it does appear if the man controls all 3 branches of Congress, they're willing to cheat to control the Supreme Court for the long term and possibly the House of Representatives forever. It seems like it doesn't just seem like a regular cycle is what I'm saying.
No, because they've read the same data that many social scientists have about actuaries and about death rates and birth rates and population. And we heard in the last 2 weeks that I think birth rates have flatlined in the United States. About 10 years ago, a report came out that the life expectancy between black and white had almost completely erased, and not because blacks were living longer, but because whites were living shorter as part of what they call the general crisis and deaths of despair, the malaise of the post-Reagan immiseration of middle-class white folk, where Reagan took $55 trillion from middle-class America, mainly white America, and put it in the permanent crisis that it's been in since Reagan left office. And so that, I think, is part of what Reagan starts the dismantling. It's Reagan who says government is not the solution, government is the problem. And that is a direct swipe at FDR, raising the federal state to provide Social Security, to provide veterans benefits, to provide homes through the FHA and the GI Bill and the Marshall Plan. All of these massive efforts of building the middle class, Reagan took it away from them. And that's why white folk are mad and misdirected their anger at everybody other than the people who've taken it away from them. This is what Bernie Sanders is all about for the last 10 years. This is what Elizabeth Warren is all about for the last 10 years, talking about how it's infected and impacted white people. This is what Occupy was about, the 99%. This is nothing new. And so the dismantling started with Reagan, and Trump is the 30-year tip end of the Reagan cycle. So Reagan is the beginning of MAGA. There's some intervening periods where you had Democrats, with Clinton and Obama, but you ultimately come back to the same concept that's in Project 2025. The Heritage Foundation is Reaganite. The Heritage Foundation and everybody connected to it was Reaganite. And they are the Reagan revolutionaries. These are the radical Republicans, the young Republicans that were in every university. I went to Pepperdine. That's ground zero of republicanism in the state of California. Absolutely ground zero of conservative republicanism in the state of California. So this whole idea of dismantling as one of his followers called the administrative state is just a more radicalized statement. The Project 2025 is a radicalized statement of the general opposition to FDR, LBJ, and MLK. FDR, MLK, LBJ. Those three men represent a 30-year cycle of liberal dominance and liberal hegemony. And Reagan was the beginning of the backlash, and Trump is a continuation of that attempt to, if you remember, Grover Norquist, who took out George Bush, he said if he could have his way, he would reduce the federal government so it could be put in a bathtub, if you remember. And he said that in the 80s. So these people, and again, if you look up Norquist, you'll see he's the guy who took out Bush when Bush said, "Read my lips, no new taxes." So that's how far this goes back. We're talking 40 years. And so Trump is the Trojan horse, an orange Trojan horse for the real demons who are behind him, who, when he's gone, will find a new host to attach themselves to, whether it's this guy J.D. Vance or somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. But I do think, Dr. Taylor, that they won't have the power that Trump has. But Trump has, they think he's charismatic. To me, it's repulsive, but that's because I see the policies behind the rhetoric. You know, J.D. Vance isn't going to, I don't think he's going to strike fear into the heart of Republicans the same way that Trump does. I don't think Donnie Trump Jr. or even, Ivanka will have the same power that he does, which is why there was such a frenzied speculation on yesterday and over the weekend that the president was dead, which he's not. But your point is well taken, and it's a really interesting way of laying things out. And as such, when we continue this conversation, I want to ask you about, Trump and the people behind him, as you so beautifully illustrated, have said over and over again that they're not going to touch Social Security, Medicare, even though I would argue they already are touching it. But now it's kind of somewhat unnoticed. There was a claim by the Trump administration that if the president's tariffs are overturned, it could put us in a financial position where we would have no choice but to cut Social Security and Medicare. I want to get your thoughts on that and other things that seem to be dismantled or disappearing before our eyes and what it means when we come forward. Dr. James Lance Taylor and you on KBLA Talk 1580.
The station you turn to when you've had it up to gear with cultural incompetence. KBLA Talk 1580.
With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Dr. Nicolai Corte. Let's preserve Black land stories before they're lost forever. I want to personally invite you to be a part of something historic. As journalist in residence for the Black Land Lost Narrative Archive Project, I've joined forces with powerhouse attorney and social justice champion George Fothery, the man who helped make history by delivering justice to the Bruce family in Manhattan Beach, securing the first known return of land unjustly taken from black owners by a local government. That victory was monumental, but it was just the beginning. For generations, black families have acquired land through grit, faith, and determination, only to lose it through violence, legal loopholes, forced sales, and systematic racism. What's been taken goes far beyond dirt and deeds. It's the erasure of wealth, identity, and legacy. That's why we've launched the Black Land Loss Narrative Archive Project, a national effort to collect, protect, and preserve the stories of black land loss before they're buried, forgotten, or erased altogether. Because there's power in telling black stories, there is resistance in remembering, and there's justice in being seen and heard. This is where you come in. We're inviting you to be a part of this historic Black Narrative Archive. If you or someone you know has experienced land loss, displacement, or forced property sales, your story deserves to be heard and remembered. Your story belongs in this archive. Your truth matters not just to your family, but to our collective future. Visit blacklandloss.org today. Fill out our simple intake form and add your voice to the National Archive of Remembrance, Resilience, and Reckoning. Let's make these stories live on, not in whispers, but on the record. With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Dr. Nicolai Corte, and as always, we welcome your feedback.
Wesley Financial Group is not a law firm.
Hi, I'm Chuck McDowell, the timeshare cancellation guy. In 2011, I founded Wesley Financial Group with one goal in mind: to help honest folks out of their timeshares permanently. Today, I run Wesley with my two sons, a real family business, treating every client and every employee like we'd want our own family treated. That philosophy has helped us grow into the largest, most trusted timeshare cancellation company in the United States. Fortune magazine even recognized us as one of the best places to work. Why? Because we genuinely care. In fact, some of our former clients were so moved by their experience working with us, they joined our team so they could help others to timeshare freedom. If you're stuck in a timeshare, give us a call. Let our family help your family.
Call Wesley now for your free timeshare exit kit. 800-687-7979. That's 800-687-7979. 800-687-7979.
This is the story of the one. As a safety manager at a manufacturing plant, he does everything he can to keep his coworkers safe. From finding ways to reduce risks to keeping safety supplies in stock. And for that, he relies on Grainger. Grainger offers a broad range of quality products and next-day delivery, so he can always play it safe. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Still getting around to that fix on your car? You got this. On eBay, you'll find millions of parts guaranteed to fit. Doesn't matter if it's a major engine repair or your first time swapping your windshield wipers. eBay has that part you need, ready to click perfectly into place for changes big and small. Loud or quiet, find all the parts you need at prices you'll love, guaranteed to fit every time. But you already know that. eBay, things, people, love. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Thanks for waking up with Dominique DiPrima on KBLA Talk 1580.
Dr. James Lance Taylor is our guest, and you got him arguing in the chat, Dr. Taylor. They're arguing about FDR and whether or not he was a progressive or a conservative, and Jerry Anderson says a Republican would never have implemented Social Security. They're going back and forth about the role of FDR. And Morris says, tax the rich, doggone it. FDR went from 27% to 90% on high-income tax earners. They're going back and forth about whether or not FDR was progressive, conservative, or what his role was.
Yeah. I think you can look at FDR and find conservative elements because he's the president of the United States, but you can also find very progressive elements. Probably the most progressive president, especially incidentally, not intentionally, for black folk, since Ulysses S. Grant. Probably the most important president in black American history who did more for black folk as black folk than any president was Ulysses S. Grant, who directly oversaw the Reconstruction period until Andrew Johnson killed it. But other than that, LBJ's War on Poverty and Great Society, again, was aimed at remedying the African American, lagging based on Jim Crow's, impact of keeping people out of the mainstream of economic flow. And then Biden with the Build Back Better plan that we don't talk about anymore, and the Inflation Reduction Act, that was about $400 million, if I'm not mistaken, more than the New Deal entirely. So Biden's Build Back Better plan, and even with Pete Buttigieg as his director of transportation, they went back into Newark, and they went and undermined those overpasses that were intended in the 60s to prevent the women you grew up knowing from going to work in and out of Newark, from the outer parts of Newark. The infrastructure, this is true in Gary, Indiana, in Buffalo, New York. Pete Buttigieg and Biden went and tore down bridges that had been put up and expressways that had been put up to cut us off. You can read about this or Google it by just going on YouTube and say, is your freeway racist? And it will, or is your expressway racist? And it will give this whole history. So again, there's been a concerted effort, I think, to keep African American folk out of the main benefits of society, and that led to our underdevelopment in a lot of ways. And I think part of what we struggle with as a Black folk is that we face a colonial condition, but our response is continuously racial and political. I mean, we are the most colonized people in the world outside of Ireland. In terms of the protractedness of 500 years,
right.
There's no other example other than the Irish under the English that compares or serves as a precedent for the Black American condition. So we continue to try to find remedies that are piecemeal. For me, reparations is the solution, the only solution to the Black condition. But we continue to support, these marginal centrist efforts to fix bullet wounds with these Band-Aids.
Yeah, it's so well said, Dr. Taylor. It's so well said. I remember those efforts that trying to root out where the racist infrastructure projects were, et cetera, et cetera. We're so far away from that now. We're at the dismantling of the Blacksonian. We are at anything that appears to help Black people being designated illegal through executive order or perception, even if it's not actually illegal, through threats and intimidation. But back to Medicare and Medi-Cal for a second. So the Trump administration actually are arguing that if his tariffs don't hold, we may have to cut Social Security and Medicare, which ties right back to your introduction, talking about the continuation of the Reagan agenda.
Yes. FDR, 1935, with the Social Security Act. Medicare and Medicaid is LBJ 30 years later. And then they've also gone after voting rights and civil rights, talking about, the 14th Amendment citizenship clause, which is more about Black folk than any immigrant group when they start talking about birthright citizenship. When Black people hear birthright citizenship, their ears should go up because that came with us. Everybody else benefited from it after us in the 14th Amendment. So again, they're after Social Security. That's Reagan and the Heritage Foundation's protracted attempt to privatize and make it capitalistic instead of it being like most of the industrialized world, universal health care or some sort of a collective effort. We got our Social Security model from Mussolini, believe it or not, and the Italians. And FDR saw it, FDR borrowed it, FDR adapted it, and the right has been against it ever since. They want it to be private, like private insurance. The same way private insurance deals with us around health care is how they would allow the Social Security privatization to work. And those who have money will benefit from the most, and those who are young and old and poor and unemployed are on their own.
So that it sounds like you're thinking what I was thinking, which is this is just an excuse to try to carry out an agenda item that they already had in store, which is the dismantling of Social Security and Medicare.
also some deep racism here. Because ever since the war on poverty and Great Society in the 60s, see, in the 30s, it was Lincoln Rockwell's art, or Rockwell's art, rather. And it was a white man in the Midwest, devastated by the boll weevil. It was an act of God. He had no control over it. He needs help. So people didn't mind giving social welfare to devastated white men and their families. Fast forward 30 years later, it's no longer in the rural South like, say, Oklahoma, but now it's in Newark, New Jersey, or in Chicago or Detroit. And now it's a black woman-headed household in many instances, not a white man and his family. So from the 30s, when it was perceived, Social Security was seen as a safety net for the deserving poor, 30 years later, it goes to black folk, like they do with affirmative action, like they did with DEI, like they did with welfare. They put it in blackface and make even women who are white, the main beneficiaries of all three of those, hate it the most. So this is an old game, and unfortunately, I think it's put us in a place where it does, fulfill their agenda. They have always wanted to get rid of any kind of social welfare because they see it as benefiting the undeserving non-white poor. And that's the white majority of America. And that's why Trump, no matter how people voted, still resonates with close to 100 million white folk, even those who did not vote with him. They understand the data. They understand the census projections. They know the Asian population has doubled. They know white women are being outburst in every county in America, even in Vermont, New Hampshire, South Dakota. They know that the black population is going from 45 million to 65 million by 2065, 40 years from now. And in 50 years from now, the black population is projected at 75 million. Every group in America is growing. This is what we were calling the browning of America when Obama was running. And this has caused an identity crisis for many of these people, and the rest of us are having to deal with it.
I think it's so interesting the way you framed it with Reagan, though, because what it really means, if you read between the lines, is the middle class lifestyle has been taken away from all these white people, and instead of blaming the policies of the Republican Party, they've been convinced to blame black people. And that's where the Trump appeal comes in.
Of the variable from a social science standpoint of race and race identity. The best way to look at party politics is through the lens of race. And you can break the electorate down by race. I mean, if only white people voted, Obama would have lost twice. Then you add women, it gets a little bluer. You add black women, it gets a lot bluer. You add black men and non-white men, it gets bluer. But the truth is there is not a single blue state in America. They're all red. And I'm a political scientist. The thing that turns a state blue is Philadelphia, Harrisburg, and Pittsburgh may turn Pennsylvania blue. San Francisco, Oakland, Alameda County, LA, San Diego, parts of it might turn California blue. Illinois and Chicago, you might turn it blue. But overall, there's not a blue state in America.
Wow. On that note, we'll head to news, traffic, and sports. We'll continue our conversation with Dr. James Lance Taylor when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
She's reclaiming her time on KBLA Talk 1580. More First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
Bree Wood with BIN News Now. Thousands marched across LA for Labor Day demanding stronger worker protections and slamming President Trump for weakening unions.
I wanted to be out here to send a message that the working class deserve to be respected.
The White House responded saying the president is, quote, finally putting American workers first. Black residents of St. Louis are demanding justice after the U.S. Army admitted to secretly spraying toxic zinc cadmium sulfide in their neighborhood during the 1950s. Black Representative Wesley Bell is backing calls for compensation as survivors link the exposure to long-term health issues. And Meek Mill says he's building an AI tool that can change the world. The rapper teased the project on X, but hasn't shared details yet. Fans are curious and some skeptical as Meek expands his reach beyond music. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
The Crohn's and Colitis Foundation has been at the forefront of inflammatory bowel disease research and care for over 50 years. Learn more about research, education, and support at Crohn'sColitisFoundation.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Rams coach Sean McVay is confident quarterback Matthew Stafford will start the regular season opener Sunday against Houston. The 37-year-old Stafford missed all of the preseason and most of training camp with an aggravated disc in his lower back. Stafford is scheduled to practice with the first unit all week to get ready for Sunday. Jackson State moved up to number 15 in this week's top 25 Division I AA college football poll. Jackson State is the only HBCU team ranked in the top 25. The Tigers opened the season Saturday with a 28-14 win over Hampton. Top 5 teams in this week's Division I poll: Ohio State, Penn State, LSU, Georgia, and Miami. The Dodgers lost to Pittsburgh 9-7. They still have a 2.5 game lead over San Diego in the NL West. The Angels beat Kansas City 5-1, a 2-run homer for right fielder Joe Adele. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
If you're an African American mom who is pregnant or have a baby under 6 months old, you deserve care that lifts, listens, and lasts. Black Infant Health is for you. It's a free program with individual support, group sessions, and resources to start your mothering journey. BIH makes space for moms and their families to create community. Learn more about the programs in Los Angeles County. Check us out at blackinfanthealth.org.
Thinking about going electric? Now is the perfect time. Electric vehicles cost less to run, don't need gas, and need fewer repairs than gas-powered cars. You can also save with federal and state tax credits, and in some areas, qualify for rebates on home charging stations. To learn more, visit www.breathesocal.org. That's www.breathesocal.org.
This is the story of the one. As a safety manager at a manufacturing plant, he does everything he can to keep his coworkers safe. From finding ways to reduce risks to keeping safety supplies in stock. And for that, he relies on Grainger. Grainger offers a broad range of quality products and next-day delivery, so he can always play it safe. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Still getting around to that fix on your car? You got this. On eBay, you'll find millions of parts guaranteed to fit. Doesn't matter if it's a major engine repair or your first time swapping your windshield wipers. eBay has that part you need, ready to click perfectly into place for changes big and small. Loud or quiet, find all the parts you need at prices you'll love. Guaranteed to fit every time. But you already know that. eBay. Things, people, love. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Broadcasting live from Lamert Park, USA. Welcome back to your home for unapologetically progressive radio. KBLA Talk 1580.
If that wasn't your wake-up call, I don't know what will be. I'm going to just remind us that we've made a pledge. KBLA delegation, we make this pledge every day to be courageous in the face of terrorizing terrifying news, because courage is contagious and we're spreading it around. But if this wasn't a wake-up call, I don't know what was. Dr. James Lance Taylor, there is not a single blue state in America. I always say California's bipolar, right? We have a lot of blue in the cities and along the coast, but if you go into the center of the state, it is red as can be.
That's right. You go up to Jefferson or that place that burned down called Paradise. They're talking about these white havens and white topias that they're trying to create in Arkansas. That's what Paradise was, the place that got razed by the fires a few years ago. It was a white enclave they had created for themselves, and so is this whole area called Jefferson. This is a part of the ancient effort in California to have three separate regions and three separate Californias, Northern California, Central California, and Southern California, because there's always a secessionist movement in California.
Right. It's really strong now because of the redistricting, because of Gavin Newsom's move to combat what's happening in Texas, Gavin Newsom and the entire state legislature, I should say, that now Republicans are really revitalizing the let's break it into two states, the red one and the blue one. Okay, but don't come on our coast then. Anyway.
That's right.
And you can't have our money either.
They can't have our Mexican food either.
No tacos for you.
No rap music. No blues. No jazz. No salt. No
Welcome
seasoning.
to Mayo America. But yeah, and that ain't gonna. I don't think that's gonna be successful anyway. But I think it is a great point, and I guess it speaks to the need, those very demographics that you're talking about, the explosion of the Asian population and the growth of Latino and Black community statistics compared to white folks, says that we have to cheat and carve up these maps and keep the Electoral College and keep the misrepresentation in the Senate in order to maintain power, right?
And this is what we have a history of in this country. There's a book called White Riots that documents the hundreds of white attempts to thwart the legitimate victories of Black Republicans during the Reconstruction period. Colfax, Louisiana, places like Wilmington, North Carolina, Tulsa, Oklahoma, we all know about. But they would use violence just like January 6th. So January 6th was simply, if we had a 90-year-old relative, or if you had a 95-year-old relative on January 6th, they would have been able to tell you this is what these white folks always do when they lose. So we got tricked, I think, in the intervening period between the civil rights movement and the Reagan Revolution into believing that they had, and I mean the generally anti-Black sentiment in the country had dissipated and withered away. But what we now know it was latent, waiting for the right person to come along and revive the anti-civil rights sentiment. And this goes back to Barry Goldwater, who opposed the 1964 Civil Rights Act, the 1965 Voting Rights Act. You come forward to 2013 with Shelby County versus Eric Holder, when they take the Section 15 pre-clearance protections. What I mean by that is, before a state like Oregon or New York or any of the former southern states could do like voter ID or DMV registration or change the age of voters or have mail-in voting, they had to get pre-clearance from the federal government,
right,
from the Department of Justice. That was taken away in 2013. And that's what I mean by the ongoing war against MLK. They're still getting victories trying to undermine the achievements of the civil rights movement, both in law and policy and in the culture, in terms of the museums and the things of that sort. So again, we got lulled to believe that certain elements in this country had been marginalized.
Yeah.
The truth is they never went away. They were just waiting for the right wind, kind of like the dry bones in the valley in the Bible. I'm going to use that in the wrong way, but the dry bones in the valley just waking up for somebody to come along and make these dry bones live. And those dry bones for us, unfortunately, happen to be the ancient bones of white supremacy in America. So Trump has come along and said, can these dry bones live? And he woke back up and mainstreamed the marginal elements of anti-Black and anti-civil rights feeling in the country. And again, most whites had no problem with a wide social safety net as long as it was a white man with his family in the rural parts of America. But when we migrated to cities and urbanized, and then federal policy under LBJ and the new, required Black men to not be in the house in many instances in the projects. I grew up in the projects on Long Island, and most of the men in our buildings were not on the leases, and then ultimately the federal government would come in and step in and play a particular role. Reagan and, Goldwater before him, Reagan, Nixon, like I said, lesser well-known people like Grover Norquist. These people have always felt like any kind of benefit to non-whites. This is where Reagan makes up the idea of the welfare queen. There was no welfare queen. I study this stuff. I write on this stuff. Reagan made up the idea and never found a black woman who was actually the welfare queen. And yet we can look at statistically since 1964, the chief beneficiaries of welfare in America have always been white people. But they project out onto us as if we don't work hard. After we worked hard for 400 years, they stigmatize us with the bad reputation of being lazy. When we got free, we took up watermelon, and you can read an Atlantic article about this. We became independent of them through watermelon. Men selling watermelon like you see Mexican men selling watermelon in L.A. today. And they racialized it is the safest way I can say it. They racialized watermelon in such a way that we shunned it when it was a symbol of our independence. So they never left us alone whenever they perceive that we've moved on. And now they got the internet. They can see our young people projecting wads and wads of Amazon money. I think most of it's fake. We're finding out a whole bunch of this stuff is fake with these rappers. But I'm just talking about, the drill rapping and stuff that's going on down in Atlanta. I'm talking about, they see the images of the gold and the cars and everything. And meanwhile, there are people like me on the reparations committee saying we deserve reparations. Well, that's cognitive dissonance, because it's like, well, y'all don't need reparations because y'all are living large. But that's because of the, I think, intentional projection of black folk in an ongoing stereotypical way where they try to highlight certain elements of the culture and not celebrate, other elements of the culture.
Yeah. Paul's in our chat saying that most rappers are red-pilled by now and that they've sort of gone MAGA. I don't know that that's true. I think that there are a number of them that have, specifically those who have been pardoned. But I don't know if that's as widespread. I hope it's not as widespread as he's indicating. A couple things I definitely... Okay, go ahead.
I just want to make one point related to our point about the intention of the meeting yesterday. After everybody thought Trump was either gravely ill or dead, they had this weird press conference out of nowhere to talk about something as irrelevant as the moving of the Space Command from Colorado to Alabama, Huntsville, Alabama. It wasn't even Tuscaloosa or somewhere, to Huntsville, Alabama. He lied and said it was going to take 30,000 jobs there, when it's actually the original 1,500 jobs from Colorado. He said he was moving it from Colorado for political reasons, that it was a mail-in state. Now Alabama is mail-in. He said Putin told mail-in was cheating, but Russia has mail-in. Most of the red states have mail-in, and Republicans use mail-in voting more than anybody. Trump tried to, I think, undermine the news about his health in the same way LBJ tried to undermine the powerful 1964 speech. This is a presidential trick with the media I'm trying to show. LBJ did this with Fannie Lou Hamer. It might be a little bit tangential, but what happens is Fannie Lou Hamer is powerfully speaking about the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party in 1964, speaking powerfully about black beatings, about jailings, about police conduct, about poll taxing, about literacy tests, and she was more effective than Martin Luther King. She really was more effective in reaching and representing the working class, the proletariat of black farmers than MLK did. And so when LBJ saw the potential of Fannie Lou Hamer's powerful voice speaking about civil rights in 1964, he held a press conference on the anniversary of JFK's death, just so he could say he's going to have give a speech on JFK's anniversary death. So I'm showing you what LBJ did to prevent the powerful voice of Fannie Lou Hamer is similar to what Trump did yesterday as a presidential tactic of manipulating the media, asking the cameras, follow me over here, don't look over there. And of course, we wake up this morning, and right now on national TV, is the Jeffrey Epstein survivors.
Yeah, exactly.
Showing their faces.
Yeah, I was actually, we're definitely going there, but I'm glad you said that, Dr. Taylor, because that's the same thing I said. Oh, he's making an announcement about the Space Force. What did people think he was going to say? I'm actually dead? The rumors are true. Like, why were people excited about that announcement? It is clearly a media manipulation. I do want to talk about the Epstein files, and I want to talk about the usurping of the congressional power of the purse and what that means when we come forward, talking with political scientist, professor, and author Dr. James Lance Taylor on KBLA Talk 1580.
More of First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
As a mom, comforting my family is what I do best. Vicks Vapor Stick provides soothing, non-medicated Vicks vapors in an easy-to-apply stick, and it dries fast, so there's no mess. I use it to comfort myself and my family.
Thanks, Mom.
Vicks Vapo Stick, soothing comfort for the whole family. And try Vicks Vapo Shower Max for steamy Vicks Vapors when you need more comfort for yourself. Use as directed.
Hey, listen to this. All I needed was a new starter. Got a great deal on eBay. Did it myself.
Yeah, that's cool. But how about the soft purr of an upgraded exhaust when it fits just right?
For me, it's the little things. Like these new windshield wipers from eBay I installed.
From small fixes to big upgrades, eBay has all the parts you need at prices you'll love. Guaranteed to fit every time. eBay. Things people love. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Asthma Peak Week is almost here, September 14th through 20th, and it's one of the most dangerous times of the year for asthma flare-ups. Did you know that Black Americans are about 5 times more likely than white Americans to end up in the emergency room due to asthma? This is an important reminder to be informed, prepared, and proactive. If you or someone you care for has asthma, now's the time to get ready. Make sure medications are filled and not expired. Review your asthma action plan with your doctor or care team. This is also the time to talk with your doctor about your triggers, monitor your symptoms closely, and double-check inhaler technique to ensure you are using all prescribed medications correctly. Caregivers, make sure your child's school or daycare has their rescue medications and know what to do in an emergency. Stay aware, have a plan, and spread the word because your health matters. For more active asthma care tips, visit luma-edu.com. This message is brought to you by Amgen and AstraZeneca.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminds you that we keep us safe. Every girl deserves a chance to shine. That's the belief behind Forgiving for Living, Inc. Since 1999, this organization has been empowering at-risk girls ages 13 to 18, helping them overcome behavioral and mental health challenges. Founder Wendy Gladney's personal journey inspired the mission to give girls hope and purpose through the power of forgiveness. Through their ambassador program, workshops, and annual conference, Forgiving for Living has touched over 3,000 young lives, providing mentoring, life skills, training, and tools for building self-esteem and confidence. You can make a difference. Visit forgivingforliving.org to donate, volunteer, become a mentor, or find help for a young girl in need. Forgiving for Living, Inc., building brighter futures for young girls. Visit forgivingforliving.org today. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
September is World Alzheimer's Month, a time to shine a light on a public health crisis that deeply impacts Black families. 1 in 5 Black adults ages 70 and older is living with Alzheimer's disease, or AD, and the risk is twice as high compared to white adults. But AD isn't just forgetting a name or losing track of time. Signs of early AD could be repeating questions, missing appointments, or struggling with bills and daily tasks. These things aren't a normal part of aging. Here's the good news. Treatments are available that may help if AD is diagnosed early. If you notice changes in memory or daily routines, whether in yourself or a loved one, don't wait. Early diagnosis and intervention are key to managing AD effectively. To learn more about AD and a potential treatment option, visit treatalsearly.com. That's treatalzearly.com to learn more about the signs and symptoms and a potential treatment option. This message is brought to you by AZI.
The conversation continues right now with Dominique DiPrima on First Things First.
And what an informative conversation this morning with Dr. James Lance Taylor. You can find his book still wherever you find books. And you can find Dr. Taylor. Well, for that, you're probably going to have to go to the University of San Francisco. You don't do a lot on social media, do you, Doc?
No, I don't. I just have a basic presence. And I do want to announce that I just completed my newest book. It should be out early next year with the title White God, Black Death. And the subtitle is Jim Jones, People's Temple, and the Racial Politics of Revolutionary Suicide. So when that's in print or even beforehand, I'd love for us to have a full conversation about it, because Jim Jones happened because of the crisis that we're talking about in that 30-year cycle between the 30s and the 60s, and then the crash that is the 70s. Jim Jones flourishes in that environment. And I'm not even interested in the cult element of Jim Jones at all, to be honest with you. But what I'm interested in is the milieu that made a man like him possible was basically one where the government said, we're not doing anything and we're not giving any kind of social services. Good luck, and go find some voluntary organizations as solutions. And Jim Jones in San Francisco and in L.A., because he had a church over there on Alvarado in West Adams. In West Adams, in fact, most of the black folk who died in Jonestown were from L.A.
I did not know that.
Everybody associates Jonestown with San Francisco, but
yeah.
The blacks were L.A.
Wow.
The whites were San Francisco.
Can't wait to have that conversation when your book comes out. We'll have to do a sit down and focus entirely on that. A couple things I want to squeeze in. Of course, I cannot let you leave without talking about the parade, the Chinese President Xi Jinping parade. He's got Kim Jong-un over there. He's got Vladimir Putin over there. He's really playing in Trump's face and having this massive military display, which is supposed to be about their victory over Japan, but really seems to be about just flexing.
We need to remind the Chinese that people like your father, people like W.E.B. Du Bois, Paul Robeson, we have no problem with the Chinese. I have no problem with Xi Jinping in terms of foreign policy, whatever's going on in his country. I know some issues because I'm in San Francisco and this is a large place for the Chinese community. But Xi Jinping carries himself the way American presidents should carry themselves, with public dignity. And Trump has surrendered that. Even Kim Jong-un looks more presidential now, and yeah, they were all smiling, they were all looking at each other, and it's sort of like this country I grew up under. It was all about the Cold War, and then it was about Russia, and then it was about the collapse in 1989 and 1991, and then Boris Yeltsin and all of that stuff, and here we are today. And the United States is not the country it was just 20 years ago.
I mean, and so that, this is also the new sort of power structure of the world emerging more in our face, right? With BRICS and this sort of realignment. You saw Xi Jinping also making up with Modi over in India. You see, it's like the U.S. is not as the big dog anymore.
Right. And it's somewhat controversial. I know, again, it's nuanced, and I know different people have different opinions, but I'm just from my impression from a distance, people like Julius Malema in South Africa says, we stand with Putin. Putin stands with us. Putin has been doing some positive things in Africa, from what I understand from a distance, even if he has some motives, some national interest in it, and so is China. We've been complaining about China's presence for over 15 years in parts of Africa, and how some Chinese individuals and business owners, like the Indians from India, really are evil and mean to the Africans. But this is not perfect. But right now, China and Russia are helping Africa more than America is.
Yeah, we saw,
and I support Africa in all of its parts.
We saw that in the alignment around Ukraine. The other thing I wanted to ask you is about the power of the purse. An appeals court did rule that the Trump administration could suspend foreign aid. This is money that was already designated by Congress and approved by Congress, and they're doing this with education and all kinds of other areas where they're cutting money that's already been allocated by Congress. That's a basic realignment of our powers of our branches of government, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's only possible because of one factor. It's not because Trump is strong. It's because the Republicans are using Trump to do this stuff. If in political science, what we learn is it's called the responsible party system. It means both parties will offer platforms and candidates and issues that the American people can objectively choose from or based on partisanship choose from. But if one of those parties doesn't behave itself and hold up its end of the separation of powers and checks and balances, then that part of the party, whether it's Democrat or Republican, makes that president more powerful. This happened with LBJ in his time when he led the war on poverty and Great Society. And that's the advantage Trump has right now is he's got the Supreme Court, or I call it the extreme court, and he's got the House, he's got the Senate, and he's got the White House. In normal politics, the electorate would punish Republicans for the next 30 years after Trump. But because of the racial glue that holds white America together, and that's the thing, race is the glue that holds blue and red white America together, it will work. Because of the racial polarization, the way we use race and gender and economics. Because, again, there's a book called Chain Reaction by a married couple of political scientists named Ed Saul and Ed Saul, Edsall. They say every issue in government, every issue, taxes, busing, schooling, budgets, environment, jobs, all is racial. There's no part of American politics or government that is not guided by the power of race first. Even the Electoral College and the Electoral College and the 3/5 clause were about white power and minimizing the fact that whites in the North and the South were awash because they were the same population size, and then there were 4 million Negroes who were the balance of power in the South, and so they made us 3/5 of a person to make us count for 60% as a people rather than as a full people. This is diabolical, and it's been going on for a long time. And so I think the thing we can do is understand what Trump's mistake is real quickly, is trying to fight us on the cultural war front. And that's like fighting Brer Rabbit in the briar patch. That's like throwing Brer Rabbit in the briar patch. Please, Mr. Trump, please fight us with culture. Please keep coming after our culture, because all he's going to do is create a new phenomena, a new kind of blues or a new kind of jazz or a new kind of poetry, a new kind of black arts movement. Something is going to come from what Du Bois calls the souls of black folk.
Yeah, no doubt.
To respond to these times.
Dr. James Lance Taylor, as always, it's a pleasure talking with you. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Tavis Smiley's up next. He's got an incredible show on deck for you as usual. So sit back and enjoy. Stay in the chat. Stay active with us on KBLA 1580 all over social media. Find the podcasts of shows you missed for free wherever you get your pods. They also live on YouTube at KBLA 1580. Like my papa, the late, great Amiri Baraka used to say, a man is either free or he is not free. There can be no apprenticeship for freedom. I'm Dominique DiPrima. See you on socials. Until tomorrow, one love.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now. Thousands marched across LA for Labor Day demanding stronger worker protections and slamming President Trump for weakening unions.